Welcome to Public Affairs. Hot show today because look, we're talking about the key issues in Illinois, which is the GOP governor's primary, which is coming up on June 28th. And we're talking about 5 candidates, we'll call 5 main candidates in that race. And in the lead up, we're going to bring you some new information that comes from WirePoints, comes from Matt Rosenberg, posted within the last week, dealing with incarceration. Because we're getting to in this show, to one of the main issues, which is crime. Crime, crime, crime. You got that? And, we've been hearing before, we're probably going to hear it again, about, mass incarceration. Just mass incarceration. Just getting worse and worse. We have so many minorities, especially minorities. Maybe just in general, people say, putting them in jail, putting them in prison. There is a difference between jail and prison. And supervision. And that's just getting worse and worse, and it's such a problem. So let's take a look at the data. Is that right? Okay. Let's see if we can bring. So you can see what it says there. Less than 2% of Illinois adults are in jail, in prison, or on parole or probation. On parole means people have been given a sentence, but then that sentence has been reduced. So they're out of jail or out of prison, and there's a supervision. Supervision is very, very light. Maybe it means, I don't know, once a week they may go to their parole officer, talk about whether they have a job. Turns out this supervision is really, really light. So people often think, they're sort of like in prison. No, they're not. Or probation. So a judge may say, I sentence you to 2 years, and then pause. On probation. Okay. So you're thinking, okay, your 2 years, you're going to be, the person is in prison, and then they'll be released on probation. No. They may do no time in prison. They'll be going right to probation, and then they have a probation officer. I mean, this sounds like, okay, Jeff, you're getting in the weeds, but are you really? No, this is what you have to know. If you really want to talk about crime. Let's look at that chart a little more closely. We have data relating to Illinois on the left side, data on the right side. We got a lot of numbers there, but we don't have to get too detailed here. But we're looking at what we call time series data. So we're looking for 2013 to 2019. Those are the years on the left. In Illinois, community supervision. These are the shares of the adult population that are subject to parole or probation. We'll call light supervision. Okay, 1.5% of the Illinois adults are subject to the probation or parole. They're not in prison, not in jail. Okay, they're just reporting to somebody about what they're doing. And these are people who've generally been convicted of something. It's not just like somebody's got a hunch, okay? They are, you could say, criminals, right? I mean, they're not really ex-offenders because they're still under the subject and jurisdiction and supervision of the courts. And so in 2013, we had 1.55%. Let's bring that slide back up again if we can briefly. And in 2019, it's gone down to 1.22%. So you can see there's a steady decline. We have less and less supervision. Think about that. If you supervise fewer people, might you have more crime? Because maybe these folks who've had a record, they're criminals. They may be they're not in prison now. They're not in jail now, but they're subject to the jurisdiction and supervision of the courts through their parole officers. Okay, and that's going down, 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 down. Let's go to incarceration now. That's the next column. The share of the adult population in 2013 wasn't 2%, because now we're talking, let's go back. Let's not go to incarceration rates by race. We're not there yet, okay? Let's see if I can get my direct, there we go. So it's 0.7% in 2013 that are incarcerated. Let's scroll ahead to 2018, 0.56%. Every year it's going down until 2018, it gets down to 0.56. 2019, it stays the same. So it doesn't go down that year, but still considerably lower in percent terms than it was in 2013. So we're incarcerating fewer people in Illinois. And so why do people say it's going up, up, up? It doesn't. It's a lie. It's a big lie. Next time somebody tells that to you, you say, it's a big lie. I saw that on Public Affairs. You're lying, lying, lying. Because you've heard the phrase big lie, but you don't hear it from the mainstream media, because what I'm saying is not a part of the liberal left-wing bias of the mainstream media to talk about mass incarceration getting worse and worse, have to get people out of jail. We've gotten them out of jail. Now they're back doing crimes. It's not a laughing matter. So let's look at the nation. What's going on there with community supervision? Well, you can see 2013 to 2019, community supervision for the nation, which is higher than Illinois, starts at 1.95% as opposed to Illinois' 1.55%. It goes down too year by year until we're down to 1.7% in 2019. So community supervision is going down for the nation, going down for Illinois. And Illinois got lower rates than on average than the nation. So people say, oh, Illinois is terrible. We got too many people in prison, get them out. Not so, not so. And let's look at the incarceration rate on the right column, the far right column. This is for the nation, the share of the adult population, 0.91%, higher than Illinois, which is 0.7. This is for 2013. And that goes down, down, down every year till we get to 2019. Now we're down to 0.82%. So incarceration is going down in the nation, going down in Illinois. Illinois has fewer people incarcerated, fewer adults than the national average. Supervision going down for the nation over the last 8 years, supervision going down for Illinois. Illinois has fewer people under supervision. So people say, well, let's take a look at race, because Jeff, that's important, because the creed here, it's creed, it's dogma. It's just, well, Jeff, we all know, don't we, that people who are subject to the laws of our state, they're going to be discriminated against. If they're Black, they will be discriminated against. If they're Hispanic, they will be discriminated against. If they're Asian, they'll be. We don't know that. We really don't know that. So let's take a look at slide 2 and see, what are the incarceration rates people go to by race in Illinois? Let's go right to that bottom line, which is the incarceration rates for whites, 0.28%, relatively small. Let's go over to the next column on the bottom, incarceration rates. And we'll see for Blacks, it's 2.1%. And for Latinos, it's 0.48%. And for Asians, it's 0.14. So what does that mean? It means that Blacks have almost a 7-time higher rate of incarceration than whites. And Latinos have almost double the rate of incarceration than whites. Higher than whites, but not nearly so much as Blacks. Asians actually have a lower incarceration rate than whites. So are we discriminating in favor of Asians? I mean, no, we don't know that. We know there are disparities in these incarceration rates. And we will just, that other data that we have up there, it's more details to get to those bottom lines. The local jail population is the top row, and you can see we have more Blacks than whites, fewer Latinos fewer Latinos in the local jail population than whites. And as percent, but the percentages are different. These are just flat numbers. State and federal prison population, we have more Blacks, even though they're a much smaller percentage of the population than whites. We have, and we look at the total incarcerated for jail and prison, we can see we have more Blacks in total incarcerated than whites, even though smaller percentage of the population. We have fewer Latinos, and they are, again, a much smaller percentage, though, of the population. So we have disparities here. We have disparities. And Does that mean convicted? So we have to know things like that, but that's kind of where, so we want to get at. Let's take a look. We don't have slides on all of these things, but we do have some on crime. In Chicago, although blacks are only 29% of the population, they're, and all of this data come from wire points, and much of this comes from Matt Rosenberg. People have seen, regular viewers know he's somebody who's written a book. We discussed that. We had Matt on for one of our shows, and then he's now a senior contributor at Wirepoints. Published a post on this very issue of incarceration. I think the date was March 22nd, and on Wirepoints, and there you'll find him talking about these data that I'm talking about just now, that the blacks are only 29% of the population. They are 80% of the murder victims in 2019, 18, and 17, according to annual police reports. So this should be of concern to people who care about minorities and care about, in particular, blacks, because they are the primary victims of these crimes we're talking about, you know? And so if you're lenient on crime, that means you're going to have more black suffering than if you were a little stronger on crime. And a lot, these folks are law abiding, they work hard, they have good values. You don't hear so much about them because, we always hear that criminals are victims. What about the work people who are law abiding, who happen to also be black, but they are truly victims because they're victims of a crime, who are committing crimes. And going right ahead, we can just touch on this slide, but others. Again, Chicago, looking at this, we've discussed this before. Chicago leads in big city homicides. So on that x-axis, we see a time series starting in 1980 and, 1960, and we go to 2020, and you can see that blue line for New York. Well, all of these lines move somewhat together in terms of going up or down, but New York in 1990 starts going down and stays down. Los Angeles starts going down and stays down. Chicago goes down, but then up, especially in the last 10 years. So why is Chicago? Because everybody says this. Oh, Parachutes, I've heard him say that. Amanda Vinicky, the whole crew at WTTW, public TV, say, oh, well, Chicago's up, but it's up all over. Not true, Paris. Not true, Amanda. Not true, Brandis. No, not true. It's not up all over. It's up but less in New York, up at less in LA, and way less in LA and New York than Chicago. Why? Why is Chicago a special case? So why are we talking about this? Let's take a step back and say, because we're talking about the governor's race. Let's remind people who's running. We're going to be seeing how adept we are at our slides here with our erstwhile director, because slide 3. So maybe, today's date's April Fool's Day, April 1. Is the joke on you? Do we have a June primary, June 28th? Is there a choice here in this race? This is the GOP, the Republican primary for governor. I'm putting up, there may be some other candidates who filed, but they may not have really significant campaigns going. Sorry, don't mean to disrespect, but you got to focus our energy and our priorities a bit on the 5 candidates who seem to have strong campaigns going on. And a special shout out to Max Solomon, because I've seen Max, he knows the issues, he's very articulate, and maybe he should be in here. Maybe in a different world in which, I don't know, people had a greater shot at getting their message out, and we were just judging them based on, do they know the issues? Can they speak about them clearly? Max would be in here. But, you know, is he going to have a campaign? He's going to have an organization. He's going to have funding so he can really be up there when the votes are counted? I don't think so. And, you know, if I'm wrong, Max can come on and say, you were wrong, Jeff. But let's look at these 5. And tops on that list, just happens to be there, is Aurora Mayor Richard Irvin. And, you know, some people will say, we're going to go by these one-on-one, and then we'll come back to the crime discussion. Now, I haven't forgotten, we were wondering about that disparity in incarceration. Is there an explanation? Yes, there is. We'll get to that. A little bit of juggling back and forth. So we're on to this. In fact, let me go back there right now. I just wanted to remind people that you've got these 5 candidates: Aurora Mayor Richard Irvin, Senator Darren Bailey, venture capitalist Jesse Sullivan, businessman Gary Rabine, former Senator Paul Schimpf. They're running. They've got campaigns, they've got organizations. Some have left out. And when we go back there and we try to understand, well, why are blacks incarcerated more? Well, in 21 years between 1991 to 2011, where the murder perps, the perpetrators, were identified, blacks were more than 70% of the known perps in each year, except one, based on the Chicago Police Department reports. More than 70%. So if they're the known perps, does it make sense they might be incarcerated at a higher rate than whites, who are many fewer in terms of their being identified, okay, where as a known perp in a murder? Does that make sense? I think, okay. And at the end, let's go forward. At the end of week 13 of 2022, Chicago Police Department data versus the same period in the last pre-COVID year, because now we're pairing pre-COVID with post-COVID, essentially. Pre-COVID year of 2019, shooting incidents were up 53%. Up 53%. That's not good. There's an overlap here. Some of those years where the governor, well, actually, there's not. That starts with the Governor Pritzker regime, 2019. So that's something Pritzker may want to talk about. Shooting incidents up 53%. Murders up 68% since he was governor. Do you think he'll want to talk about that? Hey, does the governor have any responsibility for whether there are murders in Illinois, whether there are shootings, motor vehicle thefts up 56%, robberies up 13%, major crimes up 12%? Any responsibility? I guess the candidates should be talking about that. Both the Democratic Party incumbent, J.B. Pritzker, and his potential Republican challengers. So compare those to the same span in 2021. The 2022 year-to-date data were not encouraging either, says Matt Rosenberg. Although the murders and shooting incidents were down 6 and 11% each year, or a year ago to this point, overall major crimes are up 36%. Motor vehicle theft in that last year is up 43%. Thefts are 73% up. Burglaries 36%. We haven't gotten to carjackings. We know those are way up, and those carjackings are all over. So, what do the governor candidates say about this? Well, not so much. I mean, take a sip of the beverage here. So the Richard Irvin campaign, at this point, he's been an official candidate for 2.5 months or so. We've been trying for all that period to have him on as a guest, They've been very polite. The campaign said they're working on it. They're trying to get that, and they hopefully will get scheduled, and we'll have them on, and we'll interview him for 30 minutes or so, and then we'll know much more about Richard Irvin than we know now. Right now, we know he was mayor and is mayor of the second largest city in Illinois, Aurora. We know he was in the military. We know this from the ads, and we can look it up in his bio. And we know he's a former assistant state's attorney, former prosecutor. We know he's also been a criminal defense lawyer, and his critics say he's defended some of the not so nice criminals, some of the worst, they would say. Should that matter? He would point out, as would many others, that everybody has a right to defense, including people accused of terrible, terrible, vicious, violent crimes, as well as others. So we know that. I mean, when I went through this, when I introduced him 2 months before or longer, much before he was an official candidate, I said a number of things. What I've just said, I've said what he's been an alderman, he's been a mayor, he's experienced, he speaks well on the issues, he understands politics. And I said, oh yeah, he's African American. I'd almost forgotten, because that's the way it's supposed to be. We judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, really. So yeah, but in the governor's race, we judge them too. Are they talking about crime? Are they telling you about what they would do specifically to reduce crime? Would they go after what I call the axis of evil? Would they go after Chief Judge Tim Evans, who's promoting all this easy get out of jail, get out of prison, no bail, no cash bond? Okay. Would they go after Tim Evans? Can they? Can they use the bully pulpit to sort of marshal the forces to maybe say Tim Evans is not helping things as the chief judge of the Circuit Court of Cook County, or the state's attorney, Kim Fox? Can they do that? Because she's elected. But can they use the bully pulpit? Can they? Are they using the bully pulpit? He's been running for 2.5 months, Mr. Irvin. So but let's not just pick on Richard Irvin. Let's bring that list of candidates up again. And let's go over to, Darren Bailey. He's out there. He's downstate. He's coming upstate. He's all over. Okay. And he's not had so many ads but recently got injection of funds from Dick Uihlein, major contributor, $1 million, 400,000 ad buy. So you've seen some of Bailey. Is Bailey talking about what I've just asked? Is Irvin talking about? Chief Judge Evans, Kim Fox, Tony Preckwinkle, because this is the axis of evil. They're nice people, all of them, I'm sure, but are they doing collectively the wrong thing in terms of their policies to promote crime? Much of that is set by the Illinois legislature, some is set by the judges in Cook County, but they have a bully pulpit. Richard Irvin has a bully pulpit. Senator Darren Bailey has a bully pulpit. Venture capitalist Jesse Sullivan. He's got a plan. He says, to reduce crime. Is he talking about what I am? Doesn't have to be, but you ought to judge him. Is he persuading you? He won't just be saying things. He actually has a plan. He's going to execute that plan. Part of that's using the bully pulpit. He's going to reduce crime. Businessman Gary Rabine. He just made some news. He reported that he's lent himself $1 million. Is there more coming? Will this juice up his campaign? Because he doesn't have the $20 million that Richard Irvin got from Ken Griffin, and he may get more. Doesn't seem to have Dick Uihlein's funding going to Bailey. Doesn't have the funding that Jesse Sullivan got, $10 million from some, cryptocurrency friends of his. Paul Schimpf, is he doing it? There's not a lot of evidence of a strong campaign organization. Paul Schimpf and money coming in. So are these people talking about property taxes? Remember, we've talked about property taxes. They're the second highest in the state of Illinois, property taxes. We see Illinois up there like 2% of market value, average across the country closer to 1%, many less. Illinois, these are the 50 states. Illinois is second highest. That's that big red line, 1.97% of market value. Are they talking about this? All these 5 candidates, judge them all. Don't just pick on one. I'm picking on all 5, okay? Some of those folks, all four of them, other than Richard Irvin, on Come On Public Affairs, they've been grilled, they've been challenged, done 2 shows each with me. I applaud them for that. Haven't seen Governor Pritzker do that. We've been trying to get him since before he was running, when he was running, more than 4 years ago, okay? And so we haven't seen Richard Irvin there. Come on, Mayor Irvin, because people want to see you. The conservatives, look, they dominate the base. Okay, they want to see you. People, Dan Proft and Jeannie Ives, 2 of the really big names in the conservative community, big names. What have they done? They've come out and endorsed Darren Bailey. That's a big deal. Some people I talked to say it's over. Bailey's in. You got Proft's endorsement. You got Ives' endorsement. They get that word out. That's it. Remember, Jeannie Ives ran in the Republican primary in 2018 against Bruce Rauner, essentially one-on-one. She almost beat him, not quite, 340,000 votes to his 360,000. Primary coming up on June 28th. And if she and Dan Proft, 2 leading conservative voices, are supporting Darren Bailey, does that mean it's going toward him? Because by my calculation, the winner in this race may only need 220,000 to 250,000. If they get the bulk, Bailey gets the bulk of that 340,000 that Ives got, it's over, at least for the primary, and then we'll see what happens in the general. You remember, because if Ken Griffin said he will spend hundreds of millions to beat J.B. Pritzker, he's got 25 billion in net worth. It's his, he can do it. He can, the caps are off for various reasons. So would he turn around and say, well, I wanted Richard Irvin. I thought he was the best shot, but he's out. Will Ken Griffin turn around and then support Darren Bailey? Will Dick Uihlein provide more? Will others? Or maybe Jesse Sullivan wins. He's a young guy, 37, millennial, smiles a lot, articulate, thoughtful, got a nice story to tell about his family, characterizes his wife and some of his kids as Hispanic, maybe all of his kids. I don't know how you do that. How does that have an attraction to Hispanics? Gary Rabine, longtime conservative, been out there on the hustings for a long time. Will he get the funding? Maybe Donald Trump comes in and supports him. Maybe Trump supports Bailey. Might help for the primary. Would help for the primary. Will it help for the general? Yet to be decided. Look, you just stay with public affairs. Hopefully we have Richard Irvin, Mayor Richard Irvin, coming on soon. We'll challenge him. We'll challenge everybody, not gotcha questions. Because I haven't even touched on, we said property taxes are high, but is the cause of that the teachers' unions' monopoly power that gives salaries of average teachers earning at 59 when they're retiring over $100,000 a year, pensions at 80,000 and going up starting at 59? Does somebody have to control that? Are they talking about that? Anybody talking about taking on the teachers' unions? You know, the schools were closed, they were in remote, the kids were at home, lost a year of learning. Anybody talking about that? That's a pretty risky thing, they say to me, you know, confidentially. They say, take it on the teachers' unions, like take it on the teachers. Is that what's necessary? Do we need to improve the quality of education in the inner cities of Illinois so we don't have things like 15% of Black kids, 11th grade, Black 11th graders at CPS reading at grade level? Hispanics, only 25%. You see, folks, we've spent a half an hour talking issues. When's the last time you heard one of those candidates talking issues? Well, 4 of them when they're on public affairs. So you come back to public affairs next week and every week